On this week's UBC From Here, providing engineering expertise to the Middle East.
Water is very expensive, maybe in some cases much more expensive than oil in specific context. So once you treat this water, you want to make sure that water is delivered in the same spirit to the consumers. So it's extremely important. This water distribution system is like packaging. So you want to make sure your packaging is in good condition.
Welcoming the new Chief Librarian at the Okanagan campus.
Everybody's always talking about the future of library in general, and I think it's very clear to us that there is a place for library, especially talking about people wanting more library. Obviously, we have a lot of support for services. We want to, I think, see libraries branch out to be more than perceived as just books.
And studying how the body controls breathing and the crucial flow of blood to the brain.
Breath hold divers who are at sea level, they dive down very, very deep, or they'll hold their breath while floating in water, or they'll swim underwater for long distances. There's various disciplines. But in all of those cases, they reduce the amount of oxygen in their body. They can actually desaturate or decrease the content of oxygen in their body to even below what we see in climbers at the summit of Mount Everest when they have no oxygen. So they're a fascinating cohort of people to study, and that was a really nice addition to my studies.
Hi, and welcome to this week's UBC From Here. I'm Carly, a fourth-year student in the Faculty of Arts. When Saudi Arabia was looking to review and improve their water distribution system, they turned to a number of researchers from around the world, including one based on the Okanagan campus of UBC.
Saudi Arabia is one of the very interesting countries where most of their water needs are basically through their desalination plants. So basically there is no fresh water available as we have in Canada. So they heavily rely on the groundwater, which is less quantity of the solids in it, and then they mix it with the seawater, and then they have a very comprehensive treatment, very advanced treatment. And this water is called desalinated water. Once the water is treated, the next step is how you deliver this water and where exactly this project is about. So once you treat that water from the it's called point of entry into the distribution system. So this point of entry to point of use where the consumers are using, anything can go wrong. I'm a professor in environmental and civil engineering, and now working as an acting director of the School of Engineering. And my research interest is risk analysis and water quality in the distribution system. This project is about transport and freight in the distribution network and a comprehensive study for Saudi Arabia. And in this project we are talking about contaminant intrusion into the system. So it is like a pipe, say it breaks. That is one route through which contaminant can enter into the system. If there is a negative pressure creates in the system, and when the negative pressure creates, we are talking about very high negative pressures, so it sucks everything around it. So say for example there are some leaky sewers around it, there are lots of oil and gas storage tanks. Water is very expensive, maybe in some cases much more expensive than oil in specific context. So once you treat this water, you want to make sure that water is delivered in the same spirit to the consumers. So it's extremely important. This water distribution system is like packaging. So you want to make sure your packaging is in good condition. As like any other countries, their infrastructure is deteriorating as well. This is one of the first studies being done in the context of Kingdom. So it's been a lot of studies being done of pathogen intrusion. There are some studies being done in Europe and in the United States. They are very active in this kind of research. In our research, one interesting thing is we are not only doing the modeling part, we are planning to do a lab study as well. We're trying to create some miniature distribution system, and then we try to using high-speed cameras, and we try to see, and we add some tracer in it, and we see how it distributes in the system and how our predictions going to match with what we capture through the experimental studies.
Be the person.
Be the person.
Who knows how to watch out for their friends, especially those under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
Who stands up to rape culture and avoids using offensive, sexually inappropriate language.
Who understands what sexual assault really is, which includes any unwanted sexual contact or activity.
Be the person.
Be the person.
Be the person.
Be that voice. Be the voice of Sarah.
UBC Okanagan did an extensive cross-country search for its new Chief Librarian, but ended up hiring from within.
Hi, I'm Heather Barringer, and I'm the new Chief Librarian at UBC's Okanagan Campus Library. I've been here since July of 2012. I started as the Deputy Chief Librarian, and then I was Acting Chief Librarian from September 2012 until just now, and then appointed Chief Librarian on a permanent basis. I always think of libraries as being focused on kind of three areas: on services, on spaces, and on collections. And I think that we're focusing on services in terms of providing excellent public service at our information desks. So when everyone comes in and runs into those people standing there, they have a friendly face and a very knowledgeable person to work with. We're focusing on spaces in that we know that the library needs some work. We've just renovated some of our space, and we know that we need more space, that students want more seats, and that they want a little bit more type of space. They need different kinds of collaborative spaces and space for dialogue and space to be doing informal learning activities. So we're trying to accommodate that. And then in terms of collections, we're focusing on digital collections primarily, making sure that we have access to all the research that everyone's looking for, that they can get it preferably online. If not, that they can borrow it either from here in print or get it in from Vancouver. And then we want to start thinking about special collections and regional focus for the area. More Library is about talking about more than just space. It's also about talking about engagement and how the students can work with us, and faculty, staff, everyone on campus can work with us to talk about how the library can be more. So it may be that it's about more services, it may be that it's about more collections or different collections, but More Library is a vehicle to express the ideas that are out there on campus and get them directly to us so that we can try to do something about them. Everybody's always talking about the future of library in general, and I think it's very clear to us that there is a place for library, especially talking about people wanting more library. Obviously, we have a lot of support for services. We want to, I think, see libraries branch out to be more than perceived as just books and more than perceived as just study carrels. We want them to be perceived as places where we create and invent and collaborate and work together, and we want them to be seen as technologically rich, interesting spaces, but also a place that houses kind of the history and literature and production of the region, and also houses the research output of our own faculty, staff, and students. We want to support publishing and dissemination of research and do everything we can to make this campus a productive, interesting place to be.
My best friend Paul that I met in summer camp, I lost him in the battle of mental health.
My mom was hit by a car on my 18th birthday.
I realized depression runs in my family when my cousin Jack took his own life.
He couldn't find help, and it was too late.
After the accident, everything fell apart. I lost control.
I didn't realize I was depressed until it was too late.
I wish he could have found help sooner.
I wish I would have known where to find help.
I'm glad I was able to get help.
Welcome to UBC's Next Big Thing. I'm Rosemary Jean Thompson. Hope you're having a good week so far. My guest today is Chris Willey. He is a PhD candidate here at UBC's Okanagan campus. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Briefly talk about what your research is and what took you there.
I came here with the goal of studying how changes in blood gases, so the amount of oxygen, the amount of carbon dioxide in your body, how that affects the regulation of blood flowing through your brain. We did that in a number of ways. We started off by doing that here at UBCO in the laboratory by basically changing the gases that people breathe in from canned gas. But then we wanted to apply that to a natural time when this happens. So an obvious one is at high altitude. So that's why we took a large expedition of about 25 people up near the base camp of Mount Everest. Beautiful research pyramid. We used the low partial pressure of oxygen there to see what the effects were of that, and then as well as acclimatization to that altitude on the regulation of brain blood flow.
Have you been able to gather all that research? Have you come up to any conclusions from that, or is that still in process?
Yeah, it's still definitely in process, but I can give you a few little snapshots.
Okay.
Probably the most exciting thing that we found is that as you go up there, your body changes, your kidneys actually. They're responsible for changing how you handle acid-base balance, so basically the pH of your body. And that changes at high altitude. And we see that in turn affects your brain's ability to cope with changes in oxygen and carbon dioxide. And this has real-world applications for people with diseases such as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and various other things, heart failure. Our lab isn't applying it to that, but the publications that we'll pull out, they'll certainly be of interest to researchers in those fields.
Well, that's very exciting. That isn't the only adventure you've been on recently. Just this year you went off to Croatia to do some studying and some research around breath control, underwater breathing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
We weren't actually studying them underwater. That would have been even more logistically difficult than the high altitude experiments were. At high altitude, oxygen goes down because you breathe in a lower pressure of gas. The ambient pressure is lower. But breath hold divers who are at sea level, they dive down very, very deep, or they'll hold their breath while floating in water, or they'll swim underwater for long distances. There's various disciplines. But in all of those cases, they reduce the amount of oxygen in their body. But they do that of their own volition. They hold their breaths by themselves, and they can actually desaturate or decrease the content of oxygen in their body to even below what we see in climbers at the summit of Mount Everest when they have no oxygen. So they're a fascinating cohort of people to study, and it was a really nice addition to my studies.
So how long were you there for, and what did you see? What kind of experiments were you doing?
Most simplistically, we just wanted to know what happens to their cerebral blood flow, to their delivery of blood to the brain while they're holding their breath that long. Because obviously, if you hold your breath and you reduce the amount of oxygen in your blood, your brain is starved for oxygen, and it's very, very sensitive to oxygen. Just as if you've ever gotten up too fast and then fallen over, that's because just transiently your brain didn't have enough glucose or oxygen and it couldn't handle it. And yet these people, they can go for that long and be otherwise fine. And if you or I were to do that, we would probably die.
Wow.
So we don't know precisely why they were able to do that, but we collected a lot of data, and we see that they're quite sensitive to the changes in, or the decreases in oxygen, which we didn't expect, and that they have massive increases in cerebral blood flow, up to about 150% of their normal flow.
Papers will be published around that again?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm
Great.
working on that as well right now. I'm kind of working on both of them at the same time in preparation for my thesis, which I intend to submit within the next month or so. I'm really interested in the mechanisms that make us work. And so we've got a lot of interesting studies planned. Some of those are going to take place back in Split in Croatia, because it's a really good group of people that we work with there. And then as well at Duke University, we work with some really smart people there. As well, we've got some great studies planned here. Even though I'm finishing my PhD, I think my plan for the next year or so will be more of the same. But that's not a bad thing, because it's been a very exciting 4 years.
And it's been exciting to have you here at UBC as well. Thanks for coming today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that wraps it up for this edition of UBC's Next Big Thing. Until next time, I'm Rosemary Jean Thompson. Make it a great week.
That's it for this week's UBC From Here. We'll leave you with some images from a recent UBC Okanagan event in Rutland. For more stories from the UBC Okanagan campus, visit ubco.tv. I'm Carly, and thanks for watching.
Dig Your Neighborhood is all about celebrating Rutland's image.
It originated from me moving to the Okanagan and realizing I knew nothing about this place. After quite a while, actually. It took me a long time to figure out the Okanagan had its own kind of ecological issues. So I began to think, wouldn't it be great if somebody moved into the Okanagan and they had delivered to them a package that would introduce them to this particular place? And then I decided, why don't I just get my classes involved in making something like this.
We all wrote these books talking about Rutland in various aspects through, there's children's books, there's comic books, there's true story books. We all wrote it together, we all built it together, made it so it's able to be published. So far the response to the Dig Your Neighborhood Rutland project has been very positive. It came alongside, coincidentally, at the same time that the City of Kelowna has sort of jump-started its own program to boost Rutland's image. So we lucked out in that scenario. So everyone is just really interested in seeing how these students have portrayed Rutland and what they've seen from their experiences there.